In the early stages of World War II, the United States was not originally a part of the war effort, which is something the Axis powers had hoped would stay the case, as they knew what a properly motivated U.S. military could bring to the war. Much to their dismay, however, in early December 1941, the United States entered the war, bringing with them a vast amount of natural resources, a superiority in vehicles and weaponry, and an overwhelming amount of able-bodied young Americans. Now, I want to focus on that last point for a second. Able-bodied young Americans. It was so much a part of our culture to be a young, fit thing, and to be a young, fit person, that it was something that other nations feared when talking about the United States, which is sadly something that's decreased over time. And as you can guess, it's not for the better. In the early stages of the U.S. Census labels the 2019 population of the U.S. as 328.2 million U.S. citizens. 218.6 of those are considered overweight or obese, and 109.3 million are considered obese. Now, how does that affect us exactly? Well, the grand scheme is that other nations aspire to be like us. They see a prosperous nation, economically viable, and producing a lot of content, both physically and emotionally. They want to be like us. But the other aspect is that we're a gluttonous, consumer-based culture that cares more about what we consume rather than how much of it that we do consume, which is the fact is we're a dangerous influence on those who wish to be like us. So today I'm going to be talking about the increase in the rise of obesity rates, the dangers that obesity does cause, and why it's a societal issue and how we can fix it as a culture. One of the most interesting sources that I found was an article labeled History of Obesity. And it's basically about, and so it labels the idea that obesity rates started increasing in the early stages of the Great Depression. It was the idea that those who grew up in the Depression understood the value of a full meal, and that whatever they had might not last, so they thought you should take it before you can lose it. With this came the notion, finish your plate. The idea that whatever was on your plate you had to finish, and no matter how much of it you had to finish it, because you never knew when you would get something like that ever again. Even though that we know today that this is wrong, and the fact that you should only eat what you burn off in a day, you would think that we would fix the problem by now. But the reality is it's cheaper to have a bad diet rather than hold a healthy diet. It's become more of a luxury rather than a commodity that people seem, rather than a necessity, that only really helps the top 1% who can afford those healthier alternatives. Those who can't, however, are forced to deal with the market that is only given the alternatives that aren't requested or demanded by the organic, natural-free ones. Another way to think about it is convenience. You get back from a 12-hour workday, you don't want to sit back and cook chicken and prepare a whole meal when it's easier to go to the McDonald's on the way home and just get a $6 burger, go home, drink a beer, sleep, go to work the next day. It's simply just easier. Another way to think about it is that the fact that population is increased as a whole. Now, that does make sense in the fact that as our population increases, the amount of people that are obese are also bound to increase as well. But the percent of the population is a different story. In 1960, the population of the U.S. was 180.7 million people, and only 10% of those people were labeled as obese. Fast forward to today's 328.6 million, 328.2 million, and the rate of those who are obese is 36%. So the percentage of those who are obese has increased, which shows that it's not necessarily an issue of population, rather a societal, cultural influence that we can change together. Now I'm going to be talking about the effects of obesity. Now, there's no secret that obesity has damaging effects on our health, but when it comes to effects, there is actually more than just those on our physical health. Before I get into those, though, I do want to discuss what the literal definition of obesity is. Obesity is labeled as a condition in which a person has a harmful amount of body fat or an unhealthy distribution of body fat. Excess body fat puts strain on the bones and organs, which also causes complex changes in hormones, metabolism, and increases inflammation in the body. Now, besides those physical effects, being obese also makes someone more susceptible to more fatal conditions. In an article labeled Health Risks of Overweight and Obesity, the following conditions are listed: diabetes, stroke, heart disease, sleep apnea, high blood pressure, liver disease, pregnancy complications, and cancer. Obesity also weakens the immune system. In a day and age where everyone's immune system around the world is being put to the test, you can understand the value of what that might mean to somebody. And the reality is someone who is labeled as overweight or obese is already going to the fight with one arm tied behind their back. But like I mentioned earlier, this is more than just a health risk. It's a societal issue that we can fix together. One of the biggest things is depression. Not many people might understand this, but depression is one of the bigger effects of obesity, which does not really get much attention. In an academic journal titled Millennials in the World of Work, we also find out that those who are obese, on average, earn lower wages, miss more work days, and obtain a higher average cost of living. While this might not directly affect you, in the big picture it does. And here's an analogy to help kind of put pieces 2 and 2 together. Imagine this: you're driving a car and it breaks down, and there's only 3 people in the car, representations of the US population. You have to push the car to the next gas station, but halfway to the gas station, 2 of the people in the car stop because they physically can no longer do it. The grand scheme is that the car is the economy, and you are now left to push the car by yourself. Well, it might seem like I'm trying to give a hate speech on people who are obese. It's the exact opposite. I'm not. Again, I'm calling to the societal issue that causes obesity and the regularity and the rise of increase and the increase in the percent of those who are obese. I apologize if that's what it might come off as. Again, I'm trying to kind of just hammer the fact that we can fix it as a culture. Besides the obvious ways of losing weight by eating better, working out, and getting sleep, there's one major factor that no one, again, is talking about: motivation. I've already told you that one of the effects of obesity is depression, which is something that's not commonly talked about. So when you just tell somebody to lose weight, eat healthier, it's easy, look at me, I'm doing it, they simply lack the motivation because they're either depressed or just physically can't do it. We need to change the way society views people who are obese in a way that's not more detrimental, that's not more demeaning, rather than supportive. We want those to get better. We want those people to live longer. And the best way to do that is by coming together as a culture and society to help those people out. Obesity is something that not many people talk about, and that could be for many reasons. Maybe you just don't know anyone who is obese. Maybe you don't see it as a real problem. Maybe you just don't know the real effects that it causes. The levels of obesity in the U.S. are increasing at an alarming rate. And the more we continue to ignore the causes for it, the more out of hand it gets. The United States used to be the physical embodiment of health, determination, and patriotism. I feel that isn't it about time we return to that identity?